controversy on the confiscation of imported meat. The Minister of Agriculture weighing in on this issue. And the hurricane season officially closed.
The Bahamas Tonight Northern Edition starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Shashina Roll-Farquharson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news, more controversy tonight surrounding the Ministry of Agriculture's confiscation of imported meat. Residents are again charging that the new regulations were enforced without warning. Now, those affected say they are being marginalized at a time when the Grand Bahama economy continues to struggle and when many are already finding it hard to make ends meet. Lynn Strawn says he was humbled to assist legally blind Telma Bryce by donating a few ham and turkey to her cookout in aid of her medical expenses. But he says he never dreamt that shipping the meat to Freeport would have resulted in its confiscation by the Ministry of Agriculture. He says he was made aware by his shipping agent in the U.S. of the new policy.
At that point, I called Mr. Campbell, whom I knew worked at one time in fishery and agriculture, and he said to me, well, just send him my name and everything, and he'll go ahead and secure the permit for these items.
But he says former Assistant Fisheries Superintendent Clement Campbell was denied a permit for these items. He was then directed to speak with Mike Flowers, but that proved fruitless. Strawn says once the items were delivered, he was advised officially that the goods would be confiscated, and that's when he knew he had to speak with the director of the department.
At the end of the day, through the director in Nassau, I was able to obtain a permit for these goods. I then went back to the harbor to consult with these individuals, but they had already left, and it was after 4:30, 5 o'clock, close to 5. So I contacted the lady at the exchange, and she said, well, the goods would be put in the freezer overnight, but you can come out early when the office open up and get these goods released to you.
And by 9:15 a.m., he went to the main office to retrieve the meat, but that did not go as planned.
He came in about 10:15 or thereabout, and they informed him that the director wanted to speak with him. He got the director, put him on speaker, and I overheard him telling the director that 200 pounds of goods were disposed of. And after he completed his conversation, I said to him, from my knowledge, the goods were put in the freezer overnight. And I was here from 9:15, and plus, you all knew that a permit was issued. Why would you all go forward and destroy these goods?
He says that when he met Campbell at Sanitation Services to see if the meat was really discarded, he says they only found one turkey.
Say, well, I know the landfill area. They're going to go and see if we can find it. Based on my investigation and what I find out, the stuff was picked up from agriculture building between 9 and 9:15 in a private vehicle and was taken to the landfill. It arrived at the landfill at 10:57. I rolled up my sleeve and we got into the dumpster and opened almost every bag that was in that dumpster, and we found nothing. He says, the next dumpster right here, let's look in this dumpster. So we climb in that one and we dig it up, and we found one turkey in a black bag.
They believe that something is wrong with the confiscation process.
It is now they picked up stuff and just say within less than 24 hours, 12 hours, they're going to dump it to the dumpster. These are not contaminated stuff. I mean, these are stuff that's purchased fresh. So the idea of them jumping and rushing to this conclusion so quick, what's triggered that? Why is that? You have Sheila Johnson in the back of town on TV almost every week with 90-something kids back there between the age of 13 and 16 looking for food. Why can't this stuff be assigned to them? Almost Agatha Thompson on Fort Bishop with the old folks home. So there's many different ways. There have to be some motive, or I don't know, with the purpose and the reason behind this hype of season and dumping. I can say I dump anything, but it's impossible to dump 4 turkey and 3 ham at 10:57, and we get there at 12:10, 12:15, and only can find 1 turkey.
Now, Strawn says he has written the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Michael Pintard, about this issue, but he has yet to receive a response. Well, our ZNS News team caught up with the Minister of Agriculture late yesterday evening. Ramiko Knowles has his take on this meat controversy.
There has been a public outcry regarding the enforcement of laws that governs the importation of meat. Many Bahamians are wondering why now. The Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources, the Honorable Michael Pintard, says that the regulation with respect to the import of meat for personal consumption has not changed. He says at varying times it has been enforced with degrees of regularity and intensity.
What we have sought to do in the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources in conjunction with Customs is to clarify what the rules are so that members of the public prior to traveling would be fully aware of it and not caught by surprise. In cases where persons have been inconvenienced, we've emphasized to our staff, as has Customs, to be courteous, cordial, and of course to exercise wisdom in discharging their duties.
The minister says their role is simply to serve and facilitate. He adds that their goal is to ensure that the population is able to travel and return with great ease following the required laws.
Of course, there are always those cases that there are repeat offenders. In other words, persons who for 4, 5, 6 times were given a pass, were permitted to come in, but were advised on what the appropriate protocols are and have chosen not to comply. And so I think the priority for us really is to make sure that all residents of the Bahamas understand what the rules are, and that when we apply those rules and regulations, we do so being cordial, being mindful that people are spending scarce resources, and with proper guidance, I believe Bahamians will do the correct thing more often than not.
Now, in the cases of meat confiscation, Pintard says that the process is straightforward.
If items are confiscated by the team members in whom we have confidence in terms of their integrity, if it's confiscated, for example, on the weekend, those items, I'm advised, are not discarded on the weekend. They're placed in a freezer that we have. Persons who are responsible for safeguarding our ports of entry, we hold them to a very high standard, all of our law enforcement agents, and if anyone has any concrete information rather than rumor about them violating any law or their sacred oath, please provide us with the information. We'll move swiftly to make sure that they no longer occupy those positions.
Pintard adds that the regulations are in place to safeguard the public.
It is about making sure that you know exactly where the items are coming from so that there's no real risk to the consumer.
Ramiko Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Switching gears, Chairman of Lucaine Renewal Holdings, Michael Scott, announcing that the board has taken the decision to effect repairs at the Grand Lucaine property. However, those repairs will be limited to those which is deemed necessary at a capital expenditure of up to $3.5 million. Now, to this end, the request for bids have been issued for the purpose of effecting critical repairs to the 196-room Lighthouse Point, the 40,000 square foot convention center, Breakers Key, and the Center for the 18-hole Reef Golf Course. Scott says it is the mandate of the board to effect a sale of the property as soon as possible. Accordingly, it is prudent that the board allows the new owner to address the renovation and repair of the property. Nonetheless, the board recognizes the importance of the preservation and enhancement of the income-producing center of the property in the interim. And Bahamians can now breathe a sigh of relief tonight as the much-feared Atlantic hurricane season has come and gone. This year, the season has been uneventful, but for those charged with leading the preparation campaign, the work continues. Megan Shepard explains.
The 2018 Atlantic hurricane season is officially over. Despite having 15 named storms this season, the Bahamas was spared the wrath of these destructive and sometimes deadly storms. Deputy co-chair of the Grand Bahama Disaster Consultative Committee, Tammy Mitchell, says while they are indeed grateful that the Bahamas was not affected this year, the committee made every effort to be prepared as they were able to train 76 new volunteers to be a part of the response team.
What we did this year is we used the time to focus on our training aspects of disaster management, which is something that is always needed throughout the entire country. So we did a lot of training in terms of initial damage assessment, shelter management, and we also assisted with some school safety training. So we utilized every avenue that we had possible. We used our training agencies. We also had some simulations and some other things we touched on, but the main focus we did this year was definitely to increase our volunteers.
While many residents are rightfully rejoicing the end of the season, Mitchell says that their work does not stop here. She says that they want to sensitize residents to the fact that hurricanes are not the only threat to the country and that the committee is constantly in training and work mode.
We're talking about as simple as a fire breaking out or a heavy rainstorm where there may be possible flooding, or even a threat, be it a bomb threat or any type of threat in a school or in a particular area. So that is what we're trying to encourage everybody to realize, that hurricanes is not your only disaster that's out there. Even a plane crash, for example, or a plane coming in with distress. Those are things that we are being taught to focus on as well.
Mitchell is inviting the entire community, especially schools and the industrial sector, to partner with them in constructing emergency plans for their organizations. She notes that the plan now is to extend their reach throughout the northern Bahamas.
We're also going to be reaching out more into Bimini and Abaco because, you know, they're part of the northern region, to further assist with training. And we also had the opportunity to send some emergency supplies prior to Bimini that would, you know, if there was something coming their way, they would have been able to quickly activate at some type of response level. So we did a lot this year. And we're just encouraging persons to know that continue to focus and continue to update your plans, continue to stay tuned into what's going on around you, and prepare as best as you can for any type of threat or disaster.
Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
In news from the crime beat, 6 Cuban men who were rescued on the high seas are now at the detention center in New Providence. The men were handed over to local immigration officers yesterday by the crew of the Coast Guard cutter Robert Yaird. It was quite a journey for the migrants who reportedly left Cuba 10 days ago in a rustic vessel destined for Florida. However, the vessel they were traveling in overturned in Bahamian waters some 40 nautical miles east of the Key Sal Bank. A passing fishing vessel rescued the Cubans and contacted the Defense Force, who in turn called the U.S. Coast Guard. The Coast Guard cutter came to the rescue and transferred the migrants from the fishing vessel to Freeport, where they were processed by local immigration officers. Now, this morning, the Cuban migrants were flown to the capital to be detained until repatriation to Cuba. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Stay with us. There's more news right after this break.